Hi, Lucy.
Hi Tim, how are you?
Good. Welcome. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Yes, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
No, I've been so excited. This is my favorite topic, so
Oh, and I
it'll
feel like
be
you're the
it'll be fun.
perfect person to chat with.
I will forget that we're on a podcast, I feel.
I know. I feel like talking to you you have this very calming energy, and it just comes so natural even when we chatted before.
Thank you.
For those listening at home, me and Lucy go back to 2019. We actually first met working at Unplugged Meditation in Los Angeles. And I feel like we instantly connected, and I was always interested in your work and your journey, and we'll get into all of that. But thank you for taking the time to chat with me. And unfortunately, we're not working together anymore at Unplug, but just the fact that our paths crossed, it was something special.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. You've always been, when I forget what is it? It's when you let your own light shine, it unconsciously allows others to shine. I've paraphrased a little, but I've always felt that way with you. You're just so authentic. It has me feel very at ease with you, so I'm
Oh,
excited to talk to you.
well, thank you.
Hmm.
So let's start at the very beginning. I know we have like a lot to talk about when it comes to like communicating with animals and specifically dogs. So let's have you share a little bit about your journey when you were growing up in Scotland, because you're from Scotland. Did you always feel a connection with animals, and when did you first kind of just have this inkling and pull towards communication and empathy with pets?
Hmm. Yeah, I'd say it's been forever since before I can remember, and I know that because my parents would tell me how I would just light up seeing any animal, literally anything, even bugs I was excited about. So it's always been a thing. And I suppose growing up, I always thought, oh, I'll be a veterinary surgeon maybe, or something, because that's what I think we think of when you love animals and you're being asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? And so I was always like, oh, I'll be a vet. But then, you know, fast forward to actually going to pursue veterinary, I realized how it just wasn't in alignment with what I wanted to do, mainly because it felt more business based, I guess, like the medicine world. And because I was in Scotland when I started the introductory to vet school, it was a lot of farm based animals that we were working with. So being called out to farms was incredible, but also quite harrowing as well to just see the process and to see that it was actually you were sometimes being of service to the person. And if they didn't want to pay for certain things that may alleviate pain or distress, that they didn't really have to. So it felt like I wouldn't be in service of the animal particularly.
So it just felt really transactional. I remember the story you mentioned to me before,
Yeah.
because you had this soft spot in your heart for animals, but just feeling that you were serving like the industry, whether it was for poultry or different things like that.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think the moment was when they called us out to do a cesarean for a cow, and it just was. I'll spare you the details, but it was very upsetting. And I thought, you know what? It's just not. You know, looking back on why I wanted to be a vet, it didn't really align at the time. And so I found behavioral science. I thought that's incredible. I didn't even know that was a thing that you could learn about psychology with animals. It's so it was such a novel idea to me, so it kind of took me on that path. And I haven't really looked back. I love it so much, and it's never boring, and it's always something new each time. And I'm so grateful for it.
And what was the moment that kind of just like stuck with you, that you just felt a pull towards this more like psychology based understanding of animals versus more of like the medical, the transactional side?
Mm. I think it was because I saw how transactional the veterinary thing was. So, and feeling so emotionally invested in the animals we were helping, it kind of had me realize that that was lacking in that service for animals. Not always. It was just what I saw for my little snippet, of course. But and it was funny. I was just it felt like my whole life imploded because I think when you're working towards a goal so much and then it's a bit of a change of plans. I remember sitting there in my furry bathrobe and I was eating chocolate and just thinking, well, what am I going to do with my life? I've got no plan. And it was so weird, Tim. It was like literally someone hit me on the head with this idea. I don't know how else to say it. It felt like someone was there being like, hello, do this instead. And I was like, oh, and just pulled up my laptop and found all these different theories on it and different trainers. And I just binged as much as I could get my hands on.
Yeah, and it's difficult too, especially when you're in school and you're working towards a specific goal, just thinking like this is the end goal. Once you get this degree or graduate, you kind of will have this sense of completion or fulfillment, but then it can be really discouraging when you're questioning and you're like, wait, maybe this isn't what I want to do.
Yeah,
So, what were
yeah.
some of the things that you experienced when you were studying the animal psychology that kind of changed the way that you thought about it? What were some of the things that you learned that you were inspired by?
Um, well, I'd always felt like animals are so unique. Each individual is as unique as any person I'd always met. So I that's why I think this practice really resonated with me was because it spoke to that and it allowed me to delve deeper into them as individuals. And then the more I worked with them, I found it to be true. And I think now it's turned into 11 years later this feeling of deeply wanting to share that they are so individual and unique and special and complex and they have their own likes and dislikes and personalities. And I'm not just talking about dogs, I find that with all animals. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah, and I was going to ask specifically what you work with. I know that you have the Happy Dog Club, but is that um, the animal psychology? Is it specific to dogs, or is it kind of open to all animals?
the psychology, I mainly focus on dogs because it's what I've been studying specifically.
Uh-huh.
I do work with other animals, but that's maybe more on the holistic side of things, healing and more communication side of stuff. But yeah, mainly psychology for dogs.
Awesome. So, when you were growing up, did you have like a dog, a pet that you were inspired by?
I've had so many, but they weren't ever really mine a lot of the time. But my grandma had a dog who was just the happiest dog. Her name was Toby. And apparently, I used to say to my family if they seemed sad, I'd say, be happy like Toby. And I think that's why I wanted happy or happiness to be in the business name. She taught me a lot. She was so patient. Don't know if you've seen Finding Nemo, but you know the little girl that gets her hands on the bags of fish and would just shake. I feel like I must have seemed that way to this poor dog because I was just so obsessed with her. I couldn't get close enough. I was so fascinated with her. I loved her so much, and she was so patient and understanding of the fact that I was just 2 or 3 and didn't know better. And so I guess she started it out really. But since then, we had cats as a family, and then also probably also the first dog that I ever worked with psychology wise was a dog I just was walking and I didn't really know anything. I just said yes because I thought Malamutes were cool dogs, and he was really intense and quirky and cool 1 minute and then upset the next. And I think that also was a big reason I got into this was trying to figure him out so that I could help him and be better for him. So kind of I guess all intertwined.
Yeah, for sure. So once you start studying dog psychology and you're learning this new way of thinking and communicating with dogs, tell me a little bit about what you've developed with the Happy Dog Club LA. And at this point, you've moved a few places. If you want to just talk us through your journey and kind of how that unfolded.
Yeah. Um, so when I first found out that dog psychology was a thing, I went, I came here and did a 2 week course with Caesar Milan, the dog whisperer on TV, and because I had binged all of his show and I thought it was just the coolest thing ever, and did 2 weeks of it. Thought I knew more than I did, and then went back to Scotland after this trip and was like, oh, this is what I learned. And then, of course, people then naturally asked for help, which I was humbled by, but I probably had no business really dipping my toes in it because I didn't really know much. But that's where it started. And I think getting my feet wet in it allowed me to see how little I knew. And then Caesar Milan did another course months later. And I thought, you know what? I know I need a mentor. I need guidance because I really am serious about this. But it's so intricate and there's so much to know that I decided very last minute to just pack in the personal training business I had at the time and sell stuff and move to LA and sort of blag my way into getting a mentor with Caesar's trainers. And that's where it all really started. And then from there, I've had multiple mentors that I've been so lucky to work with, learned so much. And I think I just will never stop learning. There's so much to know. But now I'd say that the business I have now feels really aligned with what I believe to be the right approach. I've taken parts of all the influences I've been lucky enough to have and left some other things that didn't feel right for me and sort of made my own philosophy now after this time.
What are some of the foundational principles that you kind of have built into your business and maybe some things that you don't think work as well?
Mm-hmm. Suppose it's mainly working from intuition and feeling. The more I get into this, the more I realize how much your own energy affects what you're doing and how the animal responds to you. So a lot of that, and mindfulness really helps. And where we met really helped too. Learning about how to meditate properly, like really honing that skill too, is a big part of it. Something I bring to my clients too. Yeah, it's mainly trying to figure out the root cause of what's going on with the dog versus seeing the behavior as just some inconvenience that I'm trying to eradicate for the human's sake. It's like, well, let's try and create actually a harmonious family dynamic versus just get rid of this behavior. Seeing it more, trying to figure out the why. Why is it going on and what's the deep-rooted cause of this symptom that we're seeing? I suppose that would be my approach.
Yeah, I love what you said, and that really stuck with me. The last conversation we had, you were explaining a little bit about it and how the dog animal, it really mirrors the energy of the human. So how you show up is how they show up for you also. And like you said, it's kind of like this broad spectrum, this big picture idea of not just having them stop this because they're supposed to, but finding out the root cause.
Yeah. Yeah, and they really do mirror us.
Are there a lot of similar root causes that you see, or what common issues do you see pop up most?
Well, I work a lot with trauma cases now, so that's a big root cause that I deal with because I work with charities, multiple rescues, but mainly Dove Project, which is saving dogs from the dog meat trade. So they've gone through some really horrific experiences and are very, very distrusting and scared, understandably. But a lot of I suppose, more the sorry, I'm having a bit of a brain moment. There we go. It came back again. Maybe an edit out moment.
All good, all good. We got it.
Yeah. Also, when it's just a family dog, frustration's a big one, and oversensitivity. So not knowing how to process our world is a big one I see, especially with sensitive dogs who were naturally supposed to be the feelers of the group, because there's multiple different roles that dogs will play. So if a dog is sensitive and also their role was to serve the pack in that they notice any change in environment. And then we take them somewhere like Los Angeles and try and walk them down the street. It's so extreme for them because they feel everything more than we can even imagine. So helping them learn how to self-soothe and what to do when they feel these sensory overloads, that's a really common one. But it's mainly about teaching the people how to show up, like we were talking about, because ideally they don't need me after a while. And so, yeah, I suppose, but it really depends, and it's always dependent on the personality too. So the why then has to be ballooned out into the bigger picture of who the dog is as well.
And really, you're just kind of analyzing the relationship between the owner and the dog also, because it seems like the owner has so much to do with it as well. It's not just you instructing the dog and training the dog, but it's also like their relationship and how they interact and show up for each other.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it makes me think of this story where I was sitting in a living room, this lovely home, and speaking to my new client, and she was telling me all about her dog. And meanwhile, the dog was just pacing back and forth, and could not sit. And she was complaining about how he just is so manic, and it was almost like if he were speaking his thoughts out loud. It was like he was like, "Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh!" It was so palpable, his anxiety level. And I was listening and watching, and then in the middle of the conversation, the office door opens across the way from where we were sitting, and her husband came out on the phone and clearly very animated and stressed out, looked agitated, sounded agitated, and then started pacing on the phone, literally back and forth in the hallway. And I just looked at that, watched the dog do the same, and looked at her, and she took a minute, and I just waited, and she was like, I was like, yeah, you see it, right? It's, look, this is how your dog thinks. This family deals with stress. And so it's just a really obvious way of explaining how they'll really look to us to be their leaders, and the way we process our emotions is also how they will take on how to deal with the world. Kind of like kids, really. The parallels between human psychology and dog psychology is actually, they run pretty deep.
Oh, and there's so many scenarios to where dogs are transferred from one home to another, whether, for any reason, or they were in the shelter and were abused. So really just kind of understanding its patterns and analyzing like where to go from there.
Yeah, which is the fun part. It's so fun to get to know them like that.
What does a typical session look like? How does it begin? Is it like a consultation, or if you want to walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, I offer a consultation on the phone because often the reason people are calling a behaviorist or psychologist or a trainer is because there's something really stressful that their dog is doing. And there's a lot of emotions attached to that. So often the phone call really does serve just the venting process. It's so important. And also just to feel like they're not alone, because it can be very isolating when a family member is going through something and you don't know how to help them, is essentially what's going on. Um, and so that's the first step. And then we book in, and then I'll go to the person's home usually, because that's where the dog is usually the most honest, so that I can just come in and see the dynamic, also hopefully see the family dynamic too that way. And then from there, it usually starts with, just because I've already had the rundown from the phone consultation, it will be the dog and I usually will start, where I'll present a few different options for the dog, because it's never one size fits all. It's very much individualized. And so although I may have a good idea of the personality or the issues, I need to double check it. So basically presenting the dog with some different avenues of how to help and how to soothe them. And it's really obvious when they find that moment where they're like, oh, I get what you mean. It's really quite obvious. So then we run with that, and I'll drill it through until the dog's like, right, okay, I see what you're saying. I get this. Okay, this feels good. Because just like with us, when we're doing something that we're succeeding in, it feels really good. Where it's just a little bit of a challenge. And then once the dog's in that place, then I hand the dog over to the people and coach from there. Because, of course, like I said, ideally, they don't need me. So, and then that becomes the homework essentially between sessions where they'll just work on it to the point where both human and dog are feeling really confident about that process. And then we layer on top of it each session. So, and often, it'll start where we're not even really addressing the reason the person called me. Sometimes it's like, oh, we need to build this dog's trust in you, or this, there's not enough confidence with both of you, or just we need to build self-esteem, or there's so many layers to it. But it's really fun because if people do the homework, then we can always layer, and it's really great to see the progress.
Yeah, and there it seems like it's not a one size fits all kind of structure to your program. Are there a certain amount of sessions that you would recommend, or is it really just kind of testing it out and seeing the results and working through kind of the process?
Yeah, it's mainly that. It also depends on how deep rooted the issue is. For example, with the dogs from the dog meat trade, they often need quite a while to even just warm up to me and trust humans again. And that needs to be established before we can even really help the behavior. So, and also some of this is so deep rooted because, like you said, they'll bounce around, especially dogs with behavioral issues are more likely to have had multiple homes. Whereas if it's something more surface level, like pulling on the leash because they're just excited, that's usually just a few sessions, really. Um, so, it really does depend.
What are some of the signs that you look for when picking up on some of the behavioral complexities of the dogs? Are there certain signs that you see, and how do you communicate essentially with the dogs?
Huh. Suppose I'm looking for who they are deeply first. So, say they're reactive, so they're barking and screaming at something, maybe another dog across the street every time they go out. There are different avenues of ways of helping dogs like that because it depends on why they're doing it. But if I can know who they are, if they're coming from a place of fear, or if they're actually really mad and if they were to get the chance, they'd actually make good on their promises and their barking. That approach is very different. How I would communicate with them, and how it would show up. So, same with a human. If, say, you were trying to ease someone who was quite anxious, but you knew they were quite sensitive, if you just bring your energy to a calmer place, it usually should influence the person. Whereas if they're just so full to the brim with excitement that they just can't contain themselves because they're just kind of a firecracker, if you're calm, it can actually make them a little bit more animated because they feel alone. And so if you bring your energy up a little, then it can help them feel this togetherness that will probably ease them. So it's a depends. So that's the first thing I look for is who are they and what pack position would they be in? What would their normal role be in with a pack of dogs? What is their natural state? Because that's what we're trying to bring them back to. Sometimes these dogs were never meant to be these big, strong, scary dogs. They're actually sensitive souls, but they just have misunderstood their role in the family, or they're just feeling frustrated or confused. And so, stripping all of those layers away, then we can really see who they are and work with that.
Yeah, I never really thought of it like that before. Just with dogs having obviously different personality types, but them kind of having their own dharma in a way that they're not all meant to fit in one box. So really just kind of meeting them where they are. And you doing this, I'm assuming, and I already know the answer, but assuming that it would take a lot of empathic energy, you yourself, just to be able to tune in your own energy and be grounded and just see where they're at to communicate with them as well as the owner.
Mhm. Yeah, and that practice has taught me so much. Because I mean, quite a confident person normally, but oh man, when I feel anxious, oh, I get so anxious. And this work has forced me to look at that in myself. I can't say, "Hey, stop being so anxious," and I'm anxious. It's not very fair. So they've taught me a lot on how to self-soothe for myself too, and how to be really honest with how I'm feeling, because it's also something clients have to learn about is how are how are they feeling, and it's not about, oh, that feeling's wrong. It's just being honest about it, because dogs can tell. You probably, I mean, I'm sure you've had this experience too. I mean, your beloved family dog, I'm sure, would always know if there was something wrong with you or upsetting you, or even if you were just unwell. They just know. They know. It's like they've got a front row seat to your heart and mind, and you cannot lie to them. So as long as you're coming from a more authentic place, even if you are stressed, as long as it's true, they'll usually, most of the time, trust it.
They just feel it too, and you could even see it in their eyes.
Yeah, yeah, they'll look at you in a different, there's like a different depth when you really need them, isn't there?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
much easier for them to meet you on a deeper level than, say, like a person. Not in every case, but a lot of cases, right? I truly believe
Uh,
that.
Me too. It's like they see through the noise, and we're so good at adding all this stuff like body language and maybe a fake smile or whatever it is, or we're good at also changing our tone of voice to trick people into believing, or just our verbal in general. We could just be lying to each other's faces, but the dog sees through all that. Animals in general do. So, and there's something so peaceful about being with a being who's so honest, isn't it?
Do you notice that you pick up on their energy sometimes, like as an empath, maybe picking up if you feel their anxiety and it comes to you? And if so, are there certain ways that you clear it and kind of keep yourself grounded between sessions?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I think you can probably relate to that too. Just, I'm sure so many people can. Just that feeling, even just when someone comes into a room and just changes the vibe and you can feel it so deeply. And sometimes it'll stay with you. Um, and that definitely happens with animals for sure. Sometimes I'll come home and just sleep if it's like a really, really tough session where the dog is just in turmoil internally. I just need to sleep. But those are more extreme cases. I've been known to just be really brave through the session and then get into my car, close the door, and just cry because of sometimes the sadness they're holding too. I mean, they've a lot of dogs I work with feel deeply understood. It seems because of course they do if they're showing a behavior that's trying to share a message or a concern or frustration or a need with their people, and that's not being understood. That's it can be really hurtful. I mean, we've probably all had that experience ourselves too. It sucks when you feel that way, and so I definitely do feel those moments. Meditation helps me hugely, and I do ground before I go in always, especially if I've got a back-to-back session after session. I don't want to bring anything from the previous one into the next one. They've got enough going on. And I love to just be really honest about how I feel because, I do this most days, thankfully, but some days I'm sad or something in my personal life is affecting me. And it's not, I never want to make myself wrong about that because that's exhausting. It's more just being really honest about, like, oh, I feel really sad today. Okay. And then just going in because honestly, most of the time, a dog will feel that. And as long as they feel you truthfully, they want to connect. It's why they're man's best friend. They adore us. we're so lucky. So I think I suppose those are my processes, and then yeah, after a lot of breathing and
And I think a
yeah,
lot of it,
just
like you said, is just acknowledging that something feels off, whether it's anxiety or something that kind of pops up, and just acknowledging it and kind of knowing that it's not yours is makes it a little bit easier to let go of and kind of move through.
hmm. My mom taught me a lot about that too. She was a Reiki master and also very empathic, and she even as a kid she would teach me about putting a bubble around you before school even. So I was quite a sensitive kid. Um, and so she'd say, okay, what color is the bubble today? And so you'd pick a color, and I still use it where you think, okay, my color is pink today, and then your bubble is pink. And it feels really nice. It's like it protects your energy and allows you still to fill the space with your positivity or your attempts to heal the situation without letting too much in. I love that one.
Are there other ways that you interpret or read energy?
Mm. I think it's all feeling for me. Um, it's almost, I know how this sounds, but it does feel like I can feel how they're feeling when I'm working with them sometimes, which is really helpful because it can guide me into what they perhaps need best. And it's where a lot of ideas will come from, where I can then offer them something else. Like thinking, okay, well, knowing what I know about them and feeling what I think they're feeling, put the two together and think, well, this would hopefully help them, and then just kind of throw it to them and hope it works. And it really, I think because I'm lucky enough to do this so much through the week, that I think it's just honing that radar, I guess, that we all have, but I guess it's just feeling.
So a big part of this really is just trusting your intuition as your guide,
Yeah.
as you're communicating with both the trainer or both the client and the dog.
Yeah. And I try not to read the person too much to not have them feel invaded because you can feel that. So, but I think I'm lucky. I think the approach that I have seems to attract people that are like-minded mostly, and they're amazing to be so honest and vulnerable with me right out the gate. And that always really helps me too. If they're telling me, perhaps their dog has bitten them before, and then understandably they're kind of scared of their dog. And so admitting that to me helps me navigate it too.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, have you had any situations to where you noticed that a lot of the problems seem to be stemming from the owner versus the dog? And like, how would you handle giving that feedback to the owner?
Mm. Yeah, in my early days, it was always like it's the human's fault. Like I heard that from mentors a lot, and so I was like, oh, okay, it's the human's fault, and I get it because it can be, but it's accidental. It's never like you want to upset your animal. And so I like to present it that this is what the dog needs. It is what you're trying to give them. It's just lost in translation. And so my job is to be the translator and the bridge of trying to get both parties to understand each other. Because when you boil it down, most people, especially folk who are willing to call in a behaviorist, would do anything for their animal to make it better. And so having the dog understand that is that beautiful light bulb moment where, oh, they do want to protect me and they do want to understand me. And then teaching the person how to, I guess, speak dog is a really helpful way, and it empowers them because why would we know? They're a completely different species. It's not our fault that we don't know, and it's not our fault that we're not showing up in the way that this animal needs. It's we often create issues with the best intentions and come from the place of, oh, but I would love this. I'd love to not have to do anything all day, not understanding that a dog needs a job, for example. So it's usually coming from a place of love and then just turning it on its head of saying, okay, well, this is how they'll receive love. I suppose kind of like their love language in a sense.
Right. Yeah, that's really true. Just us speaking their language instead of expecting them to speak ours. What are
Yeah.
some ways for those listening at home to better connect or understand their dogs? Are there any small things that they can kind of activities that they can do or just ways to connect better?
Yeah. I think one of the first things, and it's so simple, just getting into a place where your dog feels safe and calm, whether that's inside or outside, and getting yourself present and just spending time, not really talking to them or touching them, just being at peace with them and thinking about how you feel in the moment and then thinking about how they feel simply, just or even just putting your hand on them once they're settled and feeling their breathing. Are they, and what's that like, and what would you be feeling if you were breathing that way? And I really, it kind of leads us into that whole theory of anyone can read their dog. It's just we're often coming from our own narrative, our own lens, and something I have clients do as well is imitate their dog. So if their dog's doing a face or making a certain expression or body language, it's silly, but if you do it as well and think, okay, well, what would I be feeling if I were in that posture? And it really helps you answer what they're probably feeling. And it helps quieten the noise of all the opinions online and every trainer saying different things. And it really, hopefully, would empower people to know that no one knows your dog like you do. So use that. It'd be nice.
Yeah, just use the connection that's already there. And like you said, just kind of meet them on their level, whether it's the human that's meditating or just being, sitting there with their dog to just kind of build
Yeah.
that connection. That's beautiful.
And it also will help the dog see you as more of this calm, safe place, which helps everything, no matter what your dog's going through or any quirks they may have. If they see you as that safe spot that they can be at peace with and trust, and you're halfway there.
And are there any breeds that you found that are easier or different to connect with in different ways?
I'd say so, yeah, definitely, because we've bred them from one all the way into however many breeds there are. Definitely, there's definitely personalities that are shown in different breeds. For example, I work with Jindos a lot, which is a kind of like it's a really popular breed in Korea, and they're very primal. Their genes haven't been messed with as much as say like a doodle breed, so they're more primal, and so their cues are very subtle and slight. So a lot of Jindo owners will say it came out of nowhere is a common phrase when they're describing the behavior of their Jindo. And it's not true. The Jindo in their mind has told you 10 times, but it's so subtle that it can be really difficult to notice versus a goofball doodle who's more, we've changed their DNA more to be a certain way, and they're more usually more I suppose I always think of them in the most endearing way as the airheads of the dog world. They're just so fun and bouncy and energetic, usually. And so they need maybe more of like a louder, obvious way of communicating because they're just so busy having a good time that to interrupt them, to discuss something with them, it needs to be a little bit more clear. So, but ultimately, I mean, I've met really feisty, forward, front of the pack alpha type chihuahuas, and I've met pit bulls who just melt in your arms and just are big babies. So it does really boil down into personality more so, but for sure there are definitely tendencies towards different breeds and different approaches that you need to take for sure.
Yeah, they're as complex as humans are.
Yeah, they really are.
Now, when you do
Mm-hmm.
any of your offerings, is it always one on one? Or do you ever do like group sessions if there's a few animals like living together in a household?
Yeah, well, definitely. If it's the family dogs, they can all be part of it, definitely. Um, it's harder though because you're switching gears all the time because you want to be honoring each one, and sometimes that approach is different for each dog, especially if you're walking a dog on each side, and one needs more of like a calm, grounded, peaceful energy, and the other one needs a little bit more of a forward leadership kind of energy. It's difficult to balance both. So people with multiple dogs who need multiple things, it's definitely a lot harder. Um, and I do also do group sessions when it's cooler in LA. I do group socialization, and I'm actually hoping to do one for reactive dogs where I bring them all together and we all just react in a big circle and figure it out together.
Nice. Yeah, you're kind of doing the behind the scenes work, balancing all of the energies of the dogs. I,
That's the goal anyway. It's hard, it's tough.
yeah, and I wanted to ask too, how has your viewpoint changed from the beginning when you were more of like going into the medical veterinarian aspect of dogs and animals versus now to where you're really looking at it from an energetic point of view? How has your mind shifted?
I think, huh, that's a good question. I suppose it's kind of been a natural progression of just learning more in general. If I look back at the person I was when I was thinking I wanted to be a vet to the person I am now, it is different. Um, so I guess it's which one came first, the chicken or the egg? I don't know. But I think I definitely feel more at peace with this than I think I would have ever been doing veterinary because it allows me to get to be sensitive because I am a really sensitive person and quite emotional too. And I found that I think if I, at the time when I thought, do I want this for my life path? I could almost see how much I would have to squash those sides of me to be able to get through certain requirements of the job. I think vets are heroes how they do that every day. And I just had to be honest with myself. I thought, no, I don't think I can do that energetically, emotionally. Um, and so I suppose in a way, this work has allowed me to really lean into that side of me that's very, um, yeah, just very sensitive to environment and to energies.
Yeah, I think
So,
that's beautiful because you're definitely doing the work. It's just it's from a place of energetic work, essentially.
yeah.
Is that's the way that I'm looking at it now, and just having this conversation with you, because you're really holding the space. You're balancing the energy of the human, and then the pet, and then your own, and you're really just kind of connecting and peeling off the layers of things that
Ah,
it's not serving their highest good.
yeah,
And
that's exactly what it is.
I'm curious. I know you said that your mom was a Reiki master. Have you ever done any Reiki or energy work with the animals, whether it was like the chakra balancing, which I think you might have mentioned before, or any of like the energetic work with the animals?
Yeah, yeah. It started when my mom was, well, she was fully qualified and everything, and I was working with a Rottweiler who I could just get to a certain point. I was stopped. I didn't know what to do. This was still when I was back in Scotland and didn't know very much yet, and I asked my mom if she would come and Reiki this dog for me and see if it helped because I was so stumped. And this dog who was pretty reactive and pretty aggressive, really. Um, my mom walked in to the room. The dog kind of looked at her funny. My mom was just there. Reiki comes through channels in your hands, and the dog just like that, and then just laid down, and then started to lay on the side, and then she got into this trance-looking peacefulness with this deep belly breath, and my mom, who was kind of scared of big dogs, and did it anyway. I just thought, wow, this is incredible. I have to learn this. And so she taught me how to do it and attuned me. And so it is something that I like to offer people if I think they're maybe more into that side of things, because people call me, of course, for behavioral work. So, I'm selective of who I offer that to. I want to be respectful of people's beliefs and comfortability, but that's definitely something that I do offer. And sometimes it feels like it naturally wants to come through if I'm working with, especially a trauma case, that seems to want to come through. But yeah, and I think that has increased the sensitivity in this work too.
And I think there's so many people who feel so connected to their dogs. They whether they think of it as them as their best friend or like a soulmate in a way. Do you believe that there's any sort of ties to whether it could be from a past life or anything like that? If you have had any experiences or have seen that throughout your work?
Yes, for sure. I'm really into that whole stuff, all the spiritual thing. Because I don't see how it could be any other way. The connection you feel with your beloved family pet, they know you like no other, and there's this familiarity. And when you first meet them, it's almost like you've known them before. It's so magical. And I actually had the opportunity to do a past life regression through the animal communication course I'm studying. And it was life changing how it all played out. And the whole process was trying to ask your animal that had passed on a question about perhaps the life you shared this life, or just something you want to know, basically. And then the animal guides you through a past life that then answers the question. And it was so incredible. So yeah, I definitely believe in all of that. But again, I'm very careful of who I share that with, because I don't want anyone to feel unsettled, because I'm already coming in talking about energy and feelings and all of this. So I want to be respectful of people that I work with. But yeah, personally, I definitely believe in all that.
Yeah, of course. And I think that's great too with your work. You're meeting not only the animals where they are, but the people too. Whether it's they
Yeah.
know like the intricacies of like the energy work or the woo woo, or just simply having a conversation with them about different ways that they can have a better connection with their dog.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Because yeah, the psychology side of it is the heaviest hitter in what I do. But it is so cool when I have the opportunity to dabble in the more mystical side of things, and get to connect. Anytime I've done chakra balancing or crystal healing for an animal, it's just amazing how much they respond. Because it's not like they've called me and booked this appointment where they then have that placebo effect of, oh, this is going to help me, like we perhaps would. They just see me pull out some shiny rocks, I guess, and put my hands near them, and that's all they know is happening. And to see them respond so well is lovely.
Do you have any standout stories? And you don't have to go super in depth, but any standout stories that you have from any of your clients or dogs that you've worked with that come to mind?
Mm. Like, as in just a more like a deep experience, or more like a funny
Yeah,
thing,
just
or
a deep experience or where you saw a big change or even had a significant connection with the animal.
probably I guess the most challenging dog I ever worked with has always stuck with me. He was I was his eighth trainer, and he was, yeah. I at a point thought, I don't know. I think I'm finally stumped completely. And sure, in the early days of doing this, you're gonna get stumped. But I've been doing this for 11 years, and so I got quite comfortable in the feeling of saying yes to helping any situation. And so when I met him, yeah, he really had me think twice about that. But he he went from needing a muzzle with me all the time, and thankfully he had it on at the beginning, because he at a point went for my inner thigh. The femoral artery is pretty close to where he went for, and he was serious. He had a bite history and dangerous guy, and we worked with him for maybe a year, something like that, and his person was his angel, because she just would not stop and was so committed to him. And it's hard for people with such difficult dogs, because they see who they really are in the beautiful quiet moments when they get into bed together or something. It's like, oh, but they're a sweetheart and they're full of love, and it breaks the people's hearts when a dog isn't presenting themselves as this monster when they're not really that way. And so, yeah, it went from pretty tough handling to when I would approach to meet them for the session, he'd get so excited and we'd have like a big hug together. And that, it just meant so much that he had just trust in maybe a very small amount of people, especially his mom or his person, and that he allowed me in, even though I was the one kind of pushing him and trying to present more challenges each week. It humbled me, I suppose, and he's doing great, and he's a management case in ways, but he's doing really well. And I think I guess I suppose I picked to talk about him because he is the dog who probably had some of the deepest rooted issues that I've ever seen. And to get through them, it required so much bravery from him. And he taught me a lot about that, about how, even though it's painful, to still just push through it and, believe in yourself more. That's kind of what I got from him, was because he charged up the mountain and made it to the top. And I'm so proud of him.
That's awesome, and it's really inspiring to hear. And it takes a lot of patience and resilience, and I'm sure, like you said, just time to see the progress. But that's amazing.
Yeah, he taught me a lot for sure. He did.
Where would you like to see the future of not only the Happy Dog Club, but just your work in general and this work? Where would you like to see the future of it going, or what would you like to contribute to it?
But honestly, I just want to keep learning, and with every new dog, I learn so much. So that's kind of byproduct. And but I guess I'd love for the message as well to just be that we can't expect our dogs to just bend to our will and do something because we would like that. Changing how we see and approach working with animals, and having it more where it's like a conversation where you can build this relationship between the two of you would ultimately be my goal. And it would be cool to do it on a bigger scale and talk more about that concept.
Yeah, I love that perspective. It's really taking a step back and just looking at the picture as a whole from all of these different layers and aspects.
Yeah, and I think I love psychology in general. I think it's so fascinating. And I'll listen to psychologists speak about humans and child psychology, and it's in so much depth, and we really accept that. And I notice that when I'm speaking with clients or just anyone about dog psychology, it makes just as much sense to people. They're, oh, right, yeah, of course, that would make sense. But it seems like it's not really been thought of on that deep a level just yet. Like we're starting to all just start to realize that. And so I'd love to just be part of that conversation that seems to be being had more and more.
Yeah, I think it's great, and I think people's minds are slowly evolving and broadening and coming to a place to where they can look at the intricacies of the work.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I didn't know it went this deep originally either. I think it's just they've kind of shown me that, and I suppose it's just kindness at the end of the day, trying to understand each other on a and not just in a human to human connection. You know, and I think the world could use more of that if we could connect more with our environment, animals, and the environment in general. I think we'd be in a better spot. So
Yeah, and us just being more connected to ourself, it seems like we would be better connected to our animals, the environment, everything around us as well.
yeah, I love that you brought that full circle. That's exactly it. Yeah.
Well, Lucy, thank you so much. I just want to ask if you have any final thoughts or anything to share, if there's one technique or piece of advice that you would like any listeners to take away, something that they can kind of use to connect better with their animals. I know you shared some things already, but if there's one final thought or thing you'd like to share.
Yeah, I suppose I would say if anyone's listening that who has trouble with their animal in general, just there's a lot of guilt and upset that often surrounds that, and I just want people to not feel so guilty and like it's their fault because I think it just breeds more of the problem. So empowering themselves to realize that they've done their best, and all it is just an information issue, and just reaching out to somebody to help because trust me, you're not the only person that's dealt with this issue that you're dealing with. So yeah, I suppose it's that because it's so isolating and so hard when you're dealing with a tough behavioral issue. So definitely reach out for help and don't feel like it's you that's created it necessarily because that doesn't help anyone.
And there's hope for every dog, like living proof,
Yeah,
the story you just shared.
yeah, I've yet to see it fully. Like I've not seen a dog who's a lost cause. That's basically it.
Awesome. Well, how can people find you and learn more about the services that you offer and reach out to you?
Yeah. Well, I have Instagram that I need to post more on, but it's there. It's the Happy Dog Club LA, and it's the same for my website, happydogclubla.com. And yeah, people can find me there. I promise I'll be better about social media. I need to be better. I'm so bad at posting.
You offer virtual sessions as well, or is it just in person?
I do, yeah. I don't think they're quite as effective, but I definitely do offer that. So for friends back home in Scotland, because I'm here in LA, I've done those before, and it still does work. It helps for sure. So definitely can do that too. But in person's ideal.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Lucy.